rolling. Well, good afternoon. We're going to do a little visit here with Lou Maiuri. Today is the Sunday, the 25th of May, 2008, and Lou was the recipient of the 2008 Vandalia Award last evening. Lou, congratulations.
Thank you.
Quite a spectacle you made of yourself there last night.
That was a real surprise to me when I got a phone call and they told me that I was the 2008 recipient of the Vandalia Award. And, like a lot of prestigious things have happened to me in my life. And I was inducted into the Clogging Hall of Fame in 1998, which I thought was a great honor for me. And then in the year 2000, I had an opportunity to dance with the Melbourne Sloan Dancers on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry. And I told my wife, I said, well, honey, I can go ahead and die now because I've never been to heaven. I don't have to worry about that. But this award that I received from my home state of West Virginia, the Vandalia Award, was really by far the most prestigious thing that has happened to me in the dancing field or any other kind of field in my whole life.
Well, it's much deserved. You certainly contributed a lot over the years, and we'll talk about that. Could one of you do us a favor and kick that door shut and just let people know, just signal them to come on in if they come. Help us to concentrate a little bit better. Well, Lou, we're going to talk a little bit about your background here, then maybe we'll ask you to show a few dance steps. And those of you here, you might come sit up a little closer so we don't have to look over all these empty chairs to see you. This is a very informal thing, and if you have questions, anything you want to ask Lou, or comments you care to make, we very much welcome that. We're glad to have you here. We're also videotaping and making an audio tape for the State Archives and to kind of preserve this for posterity. We've been doing this all weekend with all of the Vandalia Award recipients that are still with us, and it's really been an interesting time for us. It's the first time we've done this, and I think it's been very worthwhile. So Lou, you come from Italian ancestry, isn't that correct? You're from Italian.
Yes. My father was an Italian immigrant that came to this country in 1910 when he was 16 years old. And he settled in a little town up in, I guess it's Pocahontas County, up in Spruce. If all of you know where the Cass Scenic Railroad was, that was his first job, working on the green bar cheating elk.
Now, where was he from in Italy?
Well, he came from the province of Ciprano, Italy. Or not the province, but the town of Ciprano. And
where is that?
It's in around Rome and Casino in that area. And of course they were farmers, and I've never been back over there, but some of my folks have, my brothers and sisters and cousins. But I understand that the old house and the farm is still there, and some of my relatives are still living there. I know my sister was there, and she said that they built on something to the house, but the old kitchen that they used to cook in, that had the old hearth furnace where they made bread, said it was still there.
So did he come directly from Italy to Pocahontas County, or did he ramble around a little bit?
No, he came and he was processed into Ellis Island, and then he did spend some time in New York at Hell's Kitchen, but not very long. And I have an aunt, his sister. They were already settled at Spruce, and of course, back then they advertised for immigrants, to fill the jobs, especially in the lumber industry and in the coal industry. And of course, I don't know if they had labor brokers back then, but I do know that later on that they had labor brokers that you ordered your workers from, so to speak. But my sister was there at Spruce, and her family and her husband was already working in the lumber industry there. And so Dad, he came to Spruce and lived with her.
And worked in the lumber industry?
No, he went to work on the green bar cheating elk.
Oh.
It was the city, it's what what you run on the Cass City Railroad down. And he went to work as a section hand, and they built trestles, and they built track with hand labor, you know. And Jerry Mills has got a band called the Gandy Dancers, and he's always asking, do you know what a Gandy dancer is? And I said, well, yeah, Jerry, I know what a Gandy dancer is. My dad was a Gandy dancer, and they were the laborers that built track ahead of the lumber trains, you know, to get the logs out. So that's what my dad started doing. Mm-hmm. And later on, he went to work in the shop at Cass, and that's where he learned his trade as a bar maker at the shop at Cass, where the Cass City Railroad is. In fact, number 5 engine, you know, he learned his trade as a bar maker there. And number 5, Shea number 5 was, they purchased it, of course, in number 5, and it was there at Cass when he went to work there, and that's one of the engines that they learned his trade on.
I don't mean to sound ignorant, but could you explain what a boilermaker does?
Well,
what kind of work is it?
Yes, a boilermaker, you know, if you have steam power, you know, steam boilers need, you know, they need attention, and the tubes have to be clean, and the boilers have to be, the inside of the boilers have to be, they have to be inspected. But a boiler on a steam engine, and what it does, of course, back then they used wood, because wood was, you know, wood was plentiful, especially in the lumber industry. And of course, they had a firebox. The firebox was in the boiler, and it had boiler tubes around the outside of it, and then water circulated through that, and it got hot, and it generated steam, and everything on that engine run on steam. And of course, they had trucks on it, the old Chase, you know, they had multiple trucks on it, kind of like four-wheel drives now, and they were closer together so they could maneuver those sharp turns. But that was, you know, that was how a boiler worked. Of course, like I said, the boilers had to be inspected, and they had to be cleaned, and you know, the water tubes had to be repaired, and that's what a boilermaker did.
And so he maintained all that boiling, all the equipment involved in the steam power.
Yeah, everything that involved steam power. And he was a welder too. You know, they had to be able to weld, and he was a welder also. And
how do you suppose he learned all this stuff?
Well, he learned it by doing it. That's how he did it. He learned it by doing it. And one interesting tale, you know, when he started to weld, you know, of course he couldn't even speak a word of English when he come to this country. He had to get a private tutor to learn to speak English. And but he learned his trade up there by doing it. And he and an electrician, one interesting note that most people don't know about this, but an interesting note, you know, they welded with carbide welders. Now, if anybody never worked in the coal fields, you wouldn't know what carbide is. But carbide was a crystal-like substance, and when you put water in it created gas. It created acetylene gas, you know. And in the early days, they used it in carbide lights to work in the mines and things like that.
And that gas is flammable?
Oh, yeah, highly flammable. And they had carbide welders. And the carbide was used to generate the gas. And of course, later on, they had acetylene, but that's what they welded with, was carbide welders. But anyway, my dad, an electrician up there, of course, you know, he was smart enough to see we stuck two wires together, created an arc, and metal was deposited from one piece to the other. So he and my dad got together, and my dad, like I said, being a welder, gas welder, they built an electric welder, the two of them together, and run through a little transformer. And Dad and an electrician, they welded with that welder all the time he was in Cass. And of course, when he went to Hamley, he moved down here to Hamley on the C&O Railroad was his next job. He talked him into buying an electric welder down there.
But they made their own electric welder?
They made their own electric welder at Cass. Mm-hmm. They made their own electric welder and welded with it.
So how long was he up at Cass?
He was up at Cass, I think, till about 1914. And then he went to Pittsburgh and worked on the B&O Railroad a little bit. And then he transferred to Hamley up through the Fayette County, or Kanawha County. Yeah, it's in Kanawha County. And, of course, we lived in Montgomery, that's where I was born, at Fayette County. But he transferred to Handley, and then he worked, I guess, 30 or 40 years there as a water maker.
And where did he meet your mother?
Well, he met my mother in Montgomery. Now, my mother was an Italian immigrant, too. And she was 7 years old when she came here. And her family settled in Montgomery. And, of course, my granddad, he worked in the coal fields. Now, here again, you know, the coal fields and the mines, you know, they were really needing personnel to work, so it wasn't any hard to get, it wasn't hard getting a job. And the Italian immigrants, and not only from Italy, from other places in Europe, you know, they could come over here to get a job, and they could make more in one day than the mayor of the city that they worked, you know, where they left was making. And it was an opportunity for them. You know, they lived pretty frugal. They was used to that kind of life in Italy, and so they did very well. And, you know, some of them accumulated a lot of wealth.
Mm-hmm. What was your mother's name?
My mother's name was Miranda, and her maiden name was Polistrini, Pollistrini. Most Italian names, you know, they end with an I, you know, like Martini and Maiuri. And I had an American translation for my name, but my dad elected not to change our name. And of course, I had trouble with it all through school, you know, people pronouncing it. But the American translation of my name would have been Majors, you know, so I would have been Louis Majors if I took the American translation of it.
Is that the name they tried to give him at Ellis Island?
Sorry?
Was Majors the name they tried?
No, they you know, when they came to this country, they give him his own name at Ellis Island. But some of the Italians that came here had an American translation for their name. And you know, there's a family of whites that lived up here in the Boomer area where I was raised. And of course, Bianchi in Italian means white. And of course, their name was Bianchi, so it was simple for them. The old man, he just changed and went to the Bureau of Statistics and changed his from Bianchi to white, you know. So, and that really simplified things. But you know, a lot of the kids, and we still use the Italian name for them, you know, what we was talking back and forth. We had one up at that lived in the same town I did. His name was Mike White. We called him, his name was Miguel Bianchi. And I always called him Miguel just for the fun of it.
Did your folks ever speak Italian in the
My folks talked Italian some, but that's a whole story in itself, but I'm going to tell you about it. Now, my grandmother was very, very uneducated, my grandfather. And they spoke broken English, but they knew enough that they could communicate and get by. And in my grandmother's family, they always spoke the Italian language. My mother and dad spoke a lot, but we didn't use a whole lot of it in our household, unless we were going down to my grandmother's. Now, my dad, you know, he got a tutor, and he continued his education after he left Cass, and he went to school until he got a college degree. He graduated from New York State College, which is West Virginia University Tech now. But he finally earned a degree in English, and majored in English and economics. And I remember when he graduated, but he, you know, he held high education. You know, he always put a lot of I don't know what you call it, but he was big on education. He always told us kids, you know, that the future of growth and wealth in this country was in education. You know, and he always said, son, he always called me son. He said, you work a lifetime based on 30 years at the time. And he said, you can make $50,000 a year. I said, but you know, if you got a college degree, he said, then you can double your income. And over the course of 30 years back then, the projected income for a college degree was $100,000. That was a lot. You see, that was a lot, you know. And
So did he, once he got his degree, did he change his career?
never changed his career. Back then, in that generation, there was so much prejudice. There was so much prejudice. I guess not only the Italians, but any of the immigrants that came to this country, you know, they were outsiders. And they were very, very clannish, you know, not by choice, but out of necessity. But he didn't change his field. You know, he'd been into that for a long time, and he got a steady paycheck, and he could, you know, he had a teacher's degree, but he never changed his field. And he was the best educated man in the shop, you know, but he never rose above the board maker. And he was one of the few people in our community that we lived in, and we lived in Montgomery, and of course, Smithers was a practically all Italian community. But my dad was the only person that could read and write English and could read and write Italian, because he had a degree. And those people, when they'd get letters from Italy and abroad, they'd bring them to Dad, and Dad'd have to read them to them, because they couldn't read Italian. And then when they got ready to answer the letter, you know, they dictate Italian, Dad could write the Italian, he'd answer the letters and send them on.
Well, in addition to speaking Italian in the home, what other parts of their Italian heritage were kept alive by your parents?
Cooking, mostly.
No, I had some of that food. You have to learn to cook.
Cooking, and two of the things is cooking and fellowship. And here it goes back to the part about being clannish, you know. And they had their Italian games they played, their Italian ways. And every Sunday the families got together and they had a picnic during the summer. And they always played bocce. And if y'all don't know what bocce is, it's an Italian game. They play with little balls, and I call it Italian bowling. And they played that, and that was one thing that they kept alive. And then in the wintertime, they would always get together at somebody's house. They always get together at somebody's house. One of the families each week, they would have to get together. And they would play cards, and everybody made wine back then. And everybody had grapes. They grew grapes. If they didn't, they'd order a carload, and they'd get together and order. And
would they stomp the grapes and make wine?
Yeah, they stomped it. We stomped the grapes. That's the way they did. And then they made their own wine and vinegar out of it. And those were the cooking was another thing that they kept alive. And some of the recipes that my mom had, you know, that were written in her handwriting. Of course, I have now downloaded on my computer, but I could cook all those dishes that she made. My wife could cook a lot of them too that she taught her, but the cooking part of it, you know, was kept alive.
Were they Catholics?
Yeah, all of us, we were all raised Catholics. My mother's family and my dad's family too, they were Catholics, of course. And Catholics, everybody was Roman Catholics in Italy, but they were both Catholics, and they got married. My mom was very, very young when she got married. She was only 13 and a half, you know. Of course, back then, you know, when you got old enough to get married and have kids, you just got married. My dad was like 27 when he got married. That's all, you know, that'd be like child slavery nowadays, you know. But it was, you know, it was a custom then, and that's just the way they did it.
Mm-hmm. There's not, outside of the immigrants, were there many other Catholics? Was there a large Catholic population around Montgomery when you were coming up?
Yes, there was quite a few over there, but you see, there was a couple of ethnic groups in around Montgomery and Smithers. And yes, the churches, we had one church, one Catholic church. And then we had a little church at Boomer, but both churches were always packed on Sunday. They had 2 masses on Sunday. And they weren't big churches, but, you know, they were always packed on Sunday. And there was an influx of Irish people there, and, you know, all those were Catholics. Mm-hmm. And then a big population of Italians. Smithers was full of Italians. They called it Lilly.
At Boomer, is that Catholic church, or at least one of those Catholic churches, still standing?
No, that church at Boomer was built, it wasn't one of the old churches. And the old church in Montgomery was torn down. The Chevrolet garage sits where it is now in Montgomery. But the church in Boomer was built sometime before we got married, because we got married up there. Yeah, it was about the 50s.
Those are beautiful churches. As you come into Boomer, you see there's 2, 3 beautiful churches right there. So what year did you come around? What year were you born?
I was born in 1928.
And you went to school in Montgomery?
I went to school in Montgomery. I went to school, to grade school in Montgomery. And I went grades 1st through 8th in one school. And then I went to Montgomery High School. And of course back then, you know, I walked to school. I had 3 blocks to walk to high school and a block and a half to walk to graded school. And back then, you know, I lived in a town that had everything in the town. You could buy anything you wanted in Montgomery. And a lot of the people that worked there, you know, lived there. And the ones that didn't, all the hollers around Montgomery had the coal camps. Of course, they were little communities in their own. The coal companies built houses, and you lived there and you worked there. And they had company stores that they shopped in. But yeah, there was a lot of Italian families right around there.
So you went to school with a lot of other Italian kids?
Went to school with a lot of other Italian kids, and I went to school with a lot of other nationalities of kids, and I really had a rough time, you know, when I was going to school, and you know, being an Italian, you know, they always had names for you, and Lord, I had to fight my way home from school all the time.
Really? So there was prejudice?
Oh yeah, lots of prejudice then, you know, and that didn't disappear with the 2nd generation, you know, and but you know, that was prejudice when I went to work to some degree, you know, but to the 2nd generation that were a lot of prejudice with my dad, but see, the 2nd generation, it wasn't like that. Both of my brothers, you know, with the same name, were vice presidents of big companies and had degrees in college. And, you know, I went on to be a supervisor and a manager for the telephone company and worked a long career there. And, you know, that would have been unheard of, you know, with the 1st generation when my dad come over here.
So the prejudice, what form did the prejudice take?
Well, you know, it was mostly by word of mouth. You know, you always heard that. And here again, they were clannish, you see. They were clannish. And, you know, we had Italian restaurants, you know. We had Italian restaurants that we went to, you know. And so there was a lot of prejudice there. And so some of the Italians built their Italian restaurants, and that's where they eat. And, but that was one thing where the prejudice showed up. And it showed up in the workplace a little bit, too. It showed up in the workplace a little bit. But I say after the 1st generation, when the 1st generation, I'm a 1st generation, and but it started to disappear in my generation, but it wasn't all gone. When I was a kid, I saw a lot of it.
Do you think it's gone now?
I don't think it'll ever be all the way gone. There'll always be prejudice in this country now. You hate to say that, but you can look around, you can see it today, you know, you can see it today. I don't think it'll ever go away. I think as generation mixes and race mixes, you know, I think that you'll see less and less of it. But I'm gonna tell you one thing, there'll always be some here. There'll always be some here.
So as a young man, your father took you on trips to Pocahontas County.
Yes, he did.
Was this to visit people he knew from when he worked and lived up there?
Well, yes, and the first part of what I recall about that is my dad, our brother was playing football in high school. Of course, both of us played sports. And my brother broke his ankle. Well, they had a hospital there. And of course, back then, if you broke an ankle or something like that, you know, they'd keep you for a week. And so he was in the hospital. He was in a two-bed room, and there was a fellow in there from Pocahontas County. the fellow's name was Jackson. And he was in there for some type of illness, I'm not sure. And he got to talk. Of course, my dad would go every day to visit my brother. And while he was there, of course, he talked with Mr. Jackson. And they found out that they knew a lot about each other and had a lot of common friends. And Jackson, he worked for a lawyer here in Charleston, named was John Hunter McClintock, that owned a McClintock farm up there. And so, and after my brother got out of the hospital, Wayne stayed there a little bit longer, and my dad went to visit him. But anyway, he'd go up there to visit Wayne, and I'd gone to Pocahontas County a lot, with my dad on early trips, but most of the time it was to visit the old Italian families that he did up there. Mm-hmm. See, my dad was acquainted with all the Italian families in Richwood and all the Italian families in Marlington that was around more than 4 or 5 of them, and even as far up as Elkins, and those people up in there that he did. But anyway, I'd go over with my dad at a young age, and I'd go hunting with him. I went deer hunting, I went bird hunting with him. My dad always had bird dogs. But what got me started on this old time music and flatfoot dancing was trips that I made up there to see Mr. Jackson with my dad. I think the first trip my wife, we just had got married. That was over 50 years ago. And I got acquainted with this Jackson's son. And he and I liked a lot of the same things, and we hunted together. And of course they knew the Hammondses and they knew the Carpenters, because they lived right there in that area. And my introduction to old time flatfoot dancing and good fiddle playing was on the head of Williams River when they took me back there to visit Dan Carpenter, and there was a fiddler back there named Jess Ford, and they always gathered up on the weekends and they'd move the furniture out in the kitchen and they'd play music and plunk a banjo, and the ones that wasn't playing music and dance. And that was my first introduction to this old time where I really, really got interested in it and wanted to learn that dance. And of course, before then I still had a form of a dance, and I liked string music, but nothing like what I saw up there. And I learned to pick a banjo a little bit in my early days, and I gave it up because I had a finger cut off.
Tell us the story about losing your tip of your finger there.
My brother cut that off with a hatchet. We were playing cowboys and Indians one day, and he had an old hatchet stuck down his belt. He had it in his hand, you see, and right across from our house in Montgomery, there's a fence over there. We had to jump that fence to get in that yard. And we were running side by side, and I put my hands up on the fence like that to jump. It had a rail on top of it. And he had to do something with that hatchet so he could jump, so he wouldn't stick the hatchet in the fence. And he was on the right side of me, the point of it went down and cut that finger off. And back then, I know my dad had a fit over it, not because he cut my finger off. My uncle took me to a doctor, and it was hanging by a little piece of meat. He just snipped it off. And when my dad come in, he was in Charleston. And when he come in, he took me to the hospital, and the doctor wanted to know where my finger was. Said, well, as young as he is, he can put that back on. And sewed it right back, but it was gone. But,
how old were you? Say 5?
I was about 5 or 6 years old. Mm-hmm. And that really hampered me too, because I always wanted to play a string instrument. When my brother and sisters were growing up, and my dad put a lot of stock not only in education, but he put a lot of stock in music. And he always said it was good for your social culture to learn to play music. And my brothers and sisters took piano lessons, but I always wanted, and I was young, and I always wanted to play a string instrument. Nobody around wanted to give guitar lessons. Nobody around gave banjo lessons. So, but anyway, when I got around to where I could find lessons, I found out I was hampered, because I had a finger off and I couldn't reach the chords. Nowadays, I just put a thimble on that and go on.
So you play a little bit nowadays?
I was playing now.
Oh, okay.
I don't even know where my banjo is. One of the kids lost it. But I learned to pick Cripple Creek and a little bit of Old Joe Clark and Lonesome Blues and stuff like that. It's been 60 years since I fooled around with one.
So you found your way onto the dance floor.
Yeah, I decided that, I had two instruments. I had one on each foot. And I could dance a little bit when I was younger, but, I'm getting old now. I'm 80 years old. There's a guy right there who's been watching me dance for years.
So you danced what, the jitterbug?
Well, I started out doing the jitterbug in school, and my sister was a good jitterbugger, and I learned the man's part and the woman's part too. And I taught a lot of guys in school the jitterbug because I could dance both parts, and they were kind of backwards, about. And nobody gave lessons, so they come up to the house, and my sister and I would teach them. We taught girls and boys alike.
Would they pay you for lessons, or
No, just like today, anybody comes to the house and wants to learn the flatfoot dance, they want to know how much I charge, well, I got a little team together, and I said, well, I don't charge you anything to teach you to dance. I said, but all I ask is if I need a dancer to dance on the team, well, I bet you can dance on my team. And I spent hours, I thought all hundreds of hours, I spent thousands of hours and countless dollars, teaching kids and grown-ups. If anybody come out and learn to flatfoot dance or clog, I'd teach them.
So did anybody teach you to flatfoot dance, or did you just watch it and pick it up?
Well, back in the old days, I watched Dan and Ham dance around the old square dances some. And I always said that flatfoot dancing was kind of a feeling that come from within. And at a very early age, I learned to keep time with the music. I could go steppy, step, step, and steppy, step, step, and shuffle my feet around and keep time with the music. And I knew where to change steps in the music because the jitterbug, it was broken down in 4 beats just like some of your clogging steps are. So I knew where to change and shuffle around, but I just watched it. I always said that flatfoot dancing was just kind of a feeling that come from within, where your feet and legs just kind of moved around with the music. And some of the flatfoot steps I learned by watching, and some of them I learned by doing them. And then I went through a period of time where I didn't do anything but clogging. I got clear away from flatfoot dancing because I took some formal clogger lessons about 30 years ago. And so I got clear away from the old style of flatfoot dancing because I thought that clogging was the thing, and I call it white shoe dancing.
Could you talk a little bit about the difference between old-time flatfoot dancing and the clogging?
Well, I'll try. But now, my feeling about the old-time flatfoot and is here again, is a feeling that comes from within. And to be a good flatfoot dancer, you almost had to be raised around it. You just had to be raised around it. And back when I was growing up, nobody taught dance lessons. Jimmy there, he didn't have anybody, he just danced, nobody taught him how to dance. And, but when you started learning, somebody taught you how to dance. But back then, you just developed your own dance, and you kept time with the music, and you got out there and did something with your feet. And I remember my brother-in-law talking about a drop step that he did. Well, I never heard of a drop step, but it was just something he conjured up, when he was square dancing. And that was, and flatfoot would be just a freestyle dance, and where your feet and legs are moving around in time with the music. And I always look at clogging as more of a precision dance. I call it a white shoe dance because, and it differs just in a whole lot of ways. It has a different look, and it has a whole lot of the same sounds, but it has a different look. And clogging, people wrote steps. Bill Nichols from down in Walhalla, South Carolina, was the first person that I know of, and he was associated with the Greengrass a little bit.
What was his name?
Bill Nichols. And, he developed a format that maybe 40 years ago for Southern Appalachian clogging. He developed a teaching format, and he actually named the steps and broke it down so that the footwork correlated with the music. And when I think of clogging, I think more of a precision structured dance, more than a freestyle dance, although we have freestyle cloggers. And they do routines, precision routines to clogging, precision line dances, and here again, those are what I call the white sheet dances, where everybody's on the same foot at the same time, and that would be the difference that I would see between clogging and old time. Old time just a freestyle, and you'll see many, many different styles. You know, I have a video that I really produced it to give away. It's for sale out here, and at the beginning of that, I filmed part of it at the Allegheny Jubilee down in Sparta, North Carolina. There must have been 50 dancers on the floor, all of them doing something different, you know, in the freestyle. All of them in time with the music. And so that's a lot of different styles of flat foot.
Do you want to show us a little bit?
I'll show you a little bit of what my style of flat foot.
Okay.
My style of flat foot. I'm stiff as a crutch. I've been dancing for 2 days. John's going to give me a little beat here, and I'm going to hit the leg here. And you could dance, you know, the way I do this, you know, a lot of times in the old days, all you had in the old days maybe all you had was a fiddle, or you might just have a band. You didn't have a band. And it's real easy to get, and sometimes you just clap your hands, and as long as you had a beat you could dance to, see. Now, with a fiddle or a banjo, and you'll see here with John here playing his little mandolin, if he plays a tune that I recognize, I'll know where the downbeat is. But if he doesn't, I just watch his feet, you see what I mean? And he'll play, most of these fiddlers and pickers, they always clap their foot on the downbeat, you see. And if you're dancing just a fiddle music, you look around, if you don't know the tune, you look at the fiddler's feet, you know he's hitting the downbeat. All right, give me a beat.
How fast you want?
Oh, good beat. Sir, that my feet and the steps were changing when the music changed. That's what I was talking about, moving your feet and legs in time with the music. And when the music changes, you change your step. Now, if you play that again, I'll show you the difference between that and clogging. Y'all see the difference? You see the difference in the dance? That's the difference between flat foot dancing and clogging. Now see, I was actually doing clogging steps in time with the music, and I did 3 or 4 different steps there that had names, you see.
Why don't you show us the steps and tell us the names?
Okay, the step that I did, this one here, is called the Scotty. Now somebody always writes these steps, you know, and they name them after their steps. And the Scotty step that I did looked like this. That's an 8-beat step. That's a famous step, you know, Scotty did.
Do it again.
All right.
And you start on your left foot.
I start on my left foot.
He's a left foot man.
And when I was dancing in competition, I learned a lot of steps that I could do on my right foot and a lot I could lead on my left foot. Because if you dancing in competition, and if you got out of step, or if you forgot what you was doing, you had to stay on the beat. So if you come up on the right foot, you just couldn't stop. You had to have a step that you do on your right foot, you said. And then you'd have to change it. See? Now, see, the lead's on your right foot, you see, so I could go, that's a 4-beat step. And then, if I wanted to do something and I forgot, and I was on a right foot lead, then I'd do a right foot step. See, that started on the right foot.
Did that step have a name?
Yeah.
What you just did, what's that one?
That was a double out rock step. It was a double basis. Double out rock step. Slide, step. So I can dance both dances, and I can do a little bit of modern buck dancing too, but most of the things that I get calls for now are just, most of the things that I get calls for now are mostly just the old style of dance and square dance calling and stuff like that.
What do you use as a basic step?
I use a basic clog step or a clog or flat.
Clock.
A basic clogging step, we call this a #1 basic of clogging, and it's a 4-beat step. It's a double toe step rock step or a shuffle step rock step. And you do a shuffle, and there's 4 beats, and I'll count them for you. See? And a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So there's 4 beats, and you do 2 basics. You say you're back on the left foot lead.
Talk about your shoes for a second. They look like regular running shoes. Are they?
Yes, these are regular running shoes, and I put taps on them because I do a lot of shows on concrete that's hard on my feet.
How do you attach the taps? They don't.
These are attached with nails. I use long nails and they go through the shoes.
Can you fold them over on the inside, look ahead?
Put them on the shoe last, just like you do the regular.
I've never seen anybody fit taps to a pair
These
of
are,
shoes.
you put them on screws too. I replace these toes and I put them on screws.
Now, what did you mean by modern buck dance?
Well, a modern buck dance has a different sound, and keep in mind that I'm 80 years old, and it has an extra sound in a modern buck dance. And of course, this is a regular basic. Now, a modern buck dance would be, you hear the difference in it? It has an extra beat in it. So you, and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Or you could go,
Do that last bit again? Yeah, that.
A step like a fancy double, for instance. A fancy double step looks like this. Now, if I was going to buck that up a little bit, the same step, it would sound like this.
And would you use that as a traveling step, or would that be
Oh,
something you would do?
this is a traveling step. But a buck dancers use it. They use it as a traveling step. Them young dancers can make their feet fly and do that. But here again, I'm 80 years old.
Do you do any of that drop ankle stuff?
Do what? I don't do much of that cross ankle step, but the way I used to get into that, when I'd go, I had to study on this a little bit. Let's see.
You like that, yeah.
I like that. And it hurts my ankles. About 5 or 6 years ago, I hurt my back and I lost control of my left foot. So there's some steps that I have to stay away from. But that's the way you get into that. You go. And here's the count. And 1 and 2. I'm almost good on the left foot.
Well, here, have a seat, Lou. Up a hand for Lou's dancing. I wanted to ask you a little bit about taking care of yourself as a dancer. This is a pretty vigorous physical activity with a lot of chance to hurt yourself. How do you stay injury-free?
Well, like I said, I've never hurt myself dancing. I only fell one time in my life. My feet flew out from under me and I lit on my wrist. And I was lucky I didn't break something, didn't break my arm. Had I not been in good physical condition, you know, I would have. But I always exercised because I had a love for dancing. I always hunt and fished. And I walked 3 or 4 miles every day before I hurt my back to keep myself in shape so I could do these things. But as far as injury, now a lot of people have a lot of injuries, and clogging is hard on you. It's hard on your knees, it's hard on your joints. But so far, I've been pretty lucky, you know. And as far as doing anything that to prevent it, I just, you know, I wouldn't know. I just.
Well, have you said you had these shoes, these running shoes?
Well, yeah, I use these shoes with cushion soles. And concrete's always hard on your knees and hips. And dancing, you should always try to dance on a wood floor if you can, but you can't always do that. And if you have to dance on the concrete, you're better off to wear shoes like I got on, because they provide some cushion for you. They provide some cushion for you.
What about stretches? Do you do stretches before you dance? Or
I don't usually stretch any. I do stretching exercises in the morning and sometimes at night for my back. But a lot of cloggers, they exercise taking stretches before you dance. The bone pace is always a big fan of that. But I just never did stretch. I should. You should do some squats and some stretches and some leg, some knee bends and stuff like that to kind of limber yourself up. But I just never did. But I know a lot of people that do. I just try to walk and exercise and keep myself limbered up, you know.
You look like you're in pretty good shape.
Well, I am for an old man, you know. I'm just now starting to get some things wrong with me that I have to look after. And I never had to take much medicine in my life. I take a small blood pressure pill, but he's cutting that down because it's coming down naturally. And I have a little trouble with circulatory trouble, but nothing that I'd have to have surgery for or anything like that. I'm going to have to kind of watch my fat intake and stuff like that. But that's another thing. See, dancing all my life, he told me that the only reason why that they could treat me the way they can now without having to do surgery or anything like that is because I'm in excellent physical condition for an older man.
Now you're living now near Summersville.
Live down in Summersville.
Now you spent your career down in Glasgow?
Spent my whole life in Montgomery, Glasgow. We lived there for 50 years after I got married. And I worked in Charleston for the phone company here. And then, of course, I worked all over, but I worked in Summersville too. But I never had to make a house move while I was working.
Tell us how you met your wife.
Oh, I met my wife in 1950.
47.
We got married in 1947, that's right. I was working for the telephone company, and I was working in Glasgow, the town she lived in, and she'd get off the school bus at the post office, and then she'd go down to her house and I'd watch her, and then she always walked to the post office every day, you see. Well, she was kind of pussy, and I always liked to flirt with her, so we started up a conversation there, and it was easy for me to find her phone number, so I got her phone number, and I watched her. She got home, and I called her one evening. I told her a joke. And anyway, that's how we got acquainted. And the first time I asked her to go out with me, she wouldn't do it. She fixed me up with a girlfriend, and I took her girlfriend out. But anyway, that's how I met her. And Then we started dating after that. We dated for a couple of years. We both liked to dance, and we went to dances and had a lot of fun and got married in 1950. And I'd seen her before that. I saw her when she was about 15 or 16 years old. And I asked who she was then. And,
What was Jesse's maiden name? What was Jesse's name?
She was a Hall from Clay County. She was a Hall from Clay County. And her mother was a B, and they were raised right up around the Survey area in Braxton, Clay County. She lived there till she was 9 years old.
One of 16 kids, is that correct?
Yeah, one of 16 kids was 15 living. 10 girls and 5 boys. Man, it was all good looking too, you know.
So then you, what year did you work for the phone
I
company?
started for the phone company in 1947.
You going up and down poles?
Oh, yeah, climbed sometimes 100 a day. That didn't hurt my physical condition anyway.
No, I bet it.
I always did outside plant construction work, and I had a little sideline carpenter business going, and I always raised a garden, and hunted and fished all my life, and I just been an outdoor person all my life.
So what year was it you retired from that work?
I retired in 1989. I was 61 years old. I took an early retirement. I could have worked till I was 65, but they offered me a retirement package, and I left and when I was 61 years old, and I ain't had a day off since then. I've been retired 19 years now, and I haven't regretted going early. You know, it's been a great life for me, because, you know, when you quit, you never know how long you're going to live. You know, that's like drawing Social Security at 62 versus 65. You know, you don't have no guarantees you're going to live till 65. So I took early retirement, and like I said, I never looked back. I never said I wished I'd worked longer. I really had a great retirement, and I had a dance team when I retired, and I had a competition team, and won competitions all over the southeastern part of the United States. And my team was the current reigning West Virginia clogging champions right here in the state of West Virginia. The last year that they had a competition, I still have some of those founding members on the team.
And let's get the name of your team down.
The team was the Appalachian Country Cloggers, and we got that name as a kind of unique way we got it. And we really hadn't decided on the name, and we went to Kentucky and danced on the show, or maybe down in Ohio, where Bill Monroe was down there at some kind of festival. Anyway, we opened up for Bill Monroe, and the guy that was the MC, and we called ourselves the CBS Juniors. We were part of, at the time, we were part of Garden Steele's organization. And so the man said that he introduced us as Appalachian Country Dancers. And so that name stuck with me, and it wasn't long after that till I left Garland's group, and of course I had family dancing, my granddaughter, and I had another lady, she had a granddaughter, and a couple other younger dancers. So I just decided that I'd leave and form my own team, and so and that's how I got to name the Appalachian Country Cloggers.
We only have a few more minutes. I wanted to talk a little bit about your involvement with the Augusta program.
Okay.
How many years have you been going up to Elkins?
You know, I'm trying to figure that out, but I'm going to say somewhere between 12 and 15 years. And Margaret Rutland, she was the first one to bring me up there to teach. The first year I went up there, I've been working with the Elder Hostel group up there, and I was the in-house square dance caller, and I taught flat-foot dancing. And also in later years I did an apprenticeship on square dance calling with some people up there.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, there was two people that initiated the apprenticeship, and that was one of the most rewarding things that I did. Of course, like I said, I taught a lot of people to dance, but to teach callers, you know, and I would really like to do a workshop with younger callers instead of older callers. These people were getting up in years too, but we worked 6 months. The apprenticeship lasted 6 months, And we went 2 times a month. They drove 115 miles to my house. And we always had a square. You know, you can teach square dancing and you can write, you can put it on tape and you can put it on CDs or whatever you want to. But there's nothing like having a square to call to when you dance. Now, we started out with just some instructions and talked about the music and the cadence and the timing and the figures and stuff like that. But after the first couple of sessions, we always had a square of dancers come in. I had a studio in my garage. And I went to have my sound system set up in. And we actually would do calling figures, and we was able to break them down like that. And each one of them had a chance to call over the mic. And I was kind of pleased with the way they learned.
That was Judy Van Gundy and Dave
Judy
Schomburg.
Van Gundy and Dave Schomburg.
And Judy was the one that was dancing with you here at Vandalia.
That's right here at Vandalia. She's on the front of the Golden Seal magazine with me.
Yeah. Well, we're kind of running short on time. Does anybody have any questions for Lou? Anything you want to ask him? Any fancy dance steps you want to show? You want to dance a little bit more?
Oh, that's like a little bit of flat foot.
Yeah, okay.
Doesn't make any difference if you, we only got 1 minute.
You do 1 minute worth of dancing?
All right.
Okay.
About 32 beats.
Okay. What do you want to hear?
Play a jitterbug and a jitterbug.
Here's a little more soldiers. About that same speed? Great, thanks.